Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. Alright, listen up. Today we're diving into a MFA bypass vulnerability I actually found in a real .NET application during a recent pen test. OTP bypass via premature session cookie. Here is the scenario. The app does something that sounds innocent but breaks the entire purpose of MFA. First, user submits correct credentials and then the app immediately issues the full authenticated session cookie even before asking for the OTP. Now, think about this for a second. If an attacker captures that session cookie during their own login, or if they found some leaked credentials, they can use it to access the protected endpoints directly, completely skipping that OTP step. So MFA is effectively broken here. In this video, I'll walk you through building that vulnerable .NET Core application from scratch, exploiting it step by step, and then implementing the proper fix. So let's get started. Now, before we touch any code, let me just show you why this happens. So here, first, the user submits their username and passwords, and then the app validates these credentials. After this, the app generates the authentication cookie even before the user provides the OTP. And that's where the problem is. Here, after providing the creds, the user receives the authentication cookie, due to which they doesn't have to provide the OTP. So with that token, an attacker can access unauthenticated requests within the application. Now, if any user's credentials were leaked, then the attacker can just use those credentials and access everything without providing the OTP. So what's actually happening? The app is binding the session to username and password only, not to OTP completion. The OTP steps becomes optional. In OWASP terms, this violates the session binding after authentication principle. Your session should only be considered fully authenticated after all the factors are verified. Now let me show you how this looks in the actual code. So the idea here is to create an application where the user will first provide their credentials and then they need to provide an OTP so that they can access the application, let's suppose a dashboard page or something else. So here in this flow, what we'll do is right after the user provides their username and credentials, then they will get the access token even before providing the OTP, and then we'll see how we can use it to exploit it and also how we can fix it. For building this project, I'll be using .NET as I have also identified this case in a .NET project only. And additionally, I've also did a video on how you can achieve RC via view state deserialization. So do check it out if you are working on a .NET projects. I'll link it down in the description or in the I button somewhere. So let's start building now. First of all, execute this command to create a basic template of the .NET Core web app. Now here we have our template in this directory. So these are all the files of the MVC architecture. Now first we'll modify this program.cs file. So let's open VS Code for it. In this CSproj file here, you can see we're using .NET 6.0, but actually we'll be using .NET version 8. So we'll change this to 8. And also after modifying everything within this project, I'll containerize it with Docker. So I'll do all the installations and everything within that Docker environment itself. So now let's update the program.cs file. First of all, we need to import a library for authentication cookies. Now we'll define how the authentication is being handled. This tells the app that we're going to use cookies to handle authentication. And this here configures how the authentication cookies behaves. If someone tries to access any page without being logged in, then the user will get redirected to account/login page. And if a logged in user tries to access any page that is not authorized for that user, then they will get redirected to this endpoint. And additionally, these are the cookie attributes, which we all know it's HTTP only. And this tells that this particular cookie is essential for the app to function. And we need to define this before this line, as after all these things are going to get defined, then only the application will get built. We don't really need this for the lab, so I'll just remove it. Neither this, we need static files, we need routing, we need authorization, and also we need authentication. Rest is all good. So this is the default path where the application will redirect us. Now let's go to our controllers. In the controllers, we define our logic. We'll create a new controller here and we'll call it account controller.cs. So So here, first we need to define some libraries. Now we'll create a public class with the name of the file and we'll write all our logics within that class. Let's define a username, a password, and an OTP so that we don't have to integrate database and all, which will get too lengthy for this video. Now let's start building the logic. So first, we'll need to handle the GET request when a user tries to access the login page. Here, when a user tries to access the login page, it will return a view, and this view we will define into this folder here. Now, let's define what will happen after the user submits the login credentials. So that will be a post request. Here, the function will check if the username and passwords are correct. Then it will create a user claims. Now think of claims as facts about user. It could be their name, their role, their identity. Then these claims are used to create this claims identity. So basically the claims gets wrapped into an identity object. This information will be stored into this claims identity and it is all securely encrypted. After this, the authentication properties are being set. And then the most important step, signing the user in. After this, the user is being redirected to an OTP page. And if the username or the passwords are not valid, then the user will get this error message. And then again, they will be redirected back to this view. And now let's define OTP page. Here also, as the login, a GET request will be first made to the OTP page. So let's define the GET request first, or we can just copy this. Now let's handle the post request. So here, if the OTP is a valid OTP, then the user will get redirected to the dashboard. And if not, then they will get this error message. So in order to access this home page, the user first needs to be authenticated. So let's define this in a separate controller, that is this home controller. Here, we don't really need all this code, so let's just remove it. For accessing the home page, the user needs to be authorized first. So let's define that. And we also need to import the authorization library. This is all for this controller. Now let's create the views. Let's create a folder called account, and there we'll define the login and the OTP pages. So for the login, I'll have to create a file called login.cshtml. The format is very simple. If we go to the previous templates, I'll just copy this, we'll paste it here. We'll call it login page and a form. We'll save it. Similarly, I'll create a otp.cshtml page. Here, we don't really need the action, so we can remove it. So OTP is done. Now we need to define dashboard. So first I'll delete these two as we don't really need them. Now we need to create the Docker file so that we can run this entire project. So here, first of all, we'll start with the official .NET SDK image. This image contains the .NET compiler, the build tools, and everything that is needed to compile the app. And we'll call it as build. And then we're defining our working directory in the container. It will be source. Then we'll copy this project file into the source directory, and then it downloads all the Nugget packages that is listed in this file. Now all the dependencies are installed, and then it will copy the rest of the source code into the working directory as well. After this, the project will be built in release mode. Once the app gets compiled, then comes the runtime stage. There again, we'll download everything from the official source. And in runtime, we'll set current working directory as app, and then we'll ensure that the container listens on port 80 and 443. And here we're asking the container to listen on port 80 and to accept requests from any network interfaces. After this, it copies the compiled app from build stage into this runtime container. Now the container contains only the published app, no SDK, and it is also smaller and production ready. And then this tells that when the container starts, then run the command .NET OTP bypass DLL. Now let's build the project. So open the terminal, ensure that you are in the correct working directory, and Docker is all set up in your device. You can check the status of Docker with this command. It's active and running. Now let's build the project. So for this, type. So here I've provided the image name and the present working directory. So it will reference the Docker file and it will run all the commands that we've provided there, and it will install all the necessary files for executing the container. Here we can see there is some error in the program.cs file. It says it does not contain a definition of services. So I guess we need to import something. So let's check that. Okay, here we need to just capitalize the S, save it, and rerun the command. The build is ready. Now let's try to access our application. For this, type this command. The container is now running. Let's try to access the application in our browser. And before that, we need to check the interface in which Docker is running so that we can access the container via that IP. We're getting a 404 error because we didn't define any index page. So if I go to account/login, then here you can see we've got our login page. We'll provide our username and password. Now we've got our OTP page. Now I need to provide the OTP here. I provided the wrong OTP, so there is no further action. But now here you can see with the correct OTP, I've landed to this dashboard page. Now let's try to check if we can access this dashboard page without logging or without signing in. So here you can see we have now got redirected to this login page. So our app is working completely fine. So now let's exploit the vulnerability. For this, if you want, you can also open Burp Suite, but we can also do it without Burp Suite. So here we can see we have these two cookies. Now if I just clear them and refresh the page, then you can see I've got redirected to the login page again. So those are the authentication tokens or authentication cookies. So now if I provide my user and password again and log in, then in the cookies, you can see two authentication tokens are now being set. So here, without providing the OTP, try to access the dashboard. Then you can see I'm getting the access directly, even without providing the OTP. So here you can understand the criticality of it. So I guess now the vulnerability is clear. Now let's suppose there are some sensitive payment links or admin level functionalities in this application. So it will be completely easy for an attacker if they identify and leaked credentials, then they can easily access those functionalities. So now let's see how we can fix this vulnerability. The principle is simple. Never issue a full authentication until all factors are verified. Here, they shouldn't have issued the tokens right after the user provides their login creds. So that is the simple mistake the developers did here. So we'll use a two-step approach here. First, we'll validate the username and password, and then only after OTP verification is done, we will issue a real cookie. So for this, we'll need to add session services in program.cs file. So I'm thinking for the fix, I'll create a new project so that, when I share the code in GitHub, you can easily differentiate between the fixed version and the vulnerable version.
One eternity later.
So here I've created a separate project for showing the fixed version of it. So here if I execute this container, okay, seems like the container is already running. So I'll just remove it. So now you can see the fixed lab is now removed. So let's try to execute this command again. So this is the project where we have the vulnerable code, but now we'll see how we can fix it. First of all, in the program.cs page, we need to add some session services for the fix. So here, this enables the temporary in-memory storage systems, and this statement enables the session support in our app. And these are just our cookie attributes. Now also, we need to enable our session middleware, which we can do here. Okay, save the application. Now, the account controller, we need to rewrite the logic of the post request of both login and OTP. So for this, we'll have to remove this much section. And here, we'll set a variable which will store the username in our session. And after providing the username and password, the user will get redirected to the OTP page. Now here, we'll have to write the same logic that we have removed from the login function. Okay, so after this, I'll just remove the pre-auth user from the session. So let's check. Okay, it says the username doesn't exist. You can see we have provided username here, but we needed to provide pre-auth user here. I'll just change it. Now let's rebuild. Okay, another error. Now it says pre-auth user does not exist. Okay, here I actually didn't mention the pre-auth user variable here. Basically, this variable is coming from the session token, which it cannot fetch automatically. So I need to say it to fetch the username from the session token. So for this, we need to add another if else statement to handle the null cases. That is, what if any pre-auth user is not being provided? We need to handle those cases also. Now it should work. So let's try to rebuild it again. Okay, another error. They're warning us about an asynchronous function. Let's just check it. So here I'll just add async, and also in the login it's already there. Let's save it and rerun it. Okay, my bad. I just need to change the type of the function. Okay, here I've written HTTPS context. Okay, finally the build is now working. So here you can see during the development process there will be multiple back and forth. Let's just focus back on the lab again. Now run it. I'll just clear out all the cookies. Here we've got 2 cookies. Let's check if we can access the dashboard page now. Okay, here you can see we didn't got access to the dashboard page. We got redirected back to the login page. Now if I just provide the OTP, here you can see now I'm getting access to the dashboard page. Now here you can see we've got a third cookie assigned. So this is the fixed version of our lab. So here is what you need to remember from this video. The authentication is a multi-process step. Your session should only reach authenticated state after all required factors are verified. OWASP has your back. Check out the session management cheat sheet, especially the section on session bindings after authentication. Also, the MFA cheat sheet talks about step-up authentication. In dotnet specifically, never assign session cookies until you are ready to grant access. This vulnerability is subtle because the cookie looks right. They did implement OTP, but they just put the cookie in the wrong place. If you are reviewing code, look for authentication cookies being issued before the final verification step. If you are building apps, always ask yourself, is this session really authenticated yet? That's it for this one. You can find the complete lab with both vulnerable and fixed code on my GitHub. I'll link it in the description. I've also written a detailed Medium article about the attack. So if this helped you understand MFA bypasses better, then smash that like button, hit subscribe for more real world pentest deep dives, and definitely share it with your friends or your fellow pentesters or your colleagues. And also please subscribe to catch the next video on this channel. Until then, stay curious and keep breaking things ethically. See you next time. Thank you.